All right, you're live.
Good evening, everyone. This is Chairman Cynthia Wenstrom. This is the McDowell Sonoran Preserve Commission meeting. It's April 15th, and we will call this meeting to order at 5 o'clock. We're going to start with the roll call. Vice Chair Laura LaPat Palasco.
Present.
Commissioner Coluccio.
Present.
Commissioner Dodd.
Present.
Commissioner Hackbarth.
Commissioner Hackbarth is present.
Commissioner Lips. Commissioner Lips.
Marcia, you're still muted.
I know, I just noticed. Commissioner Lips is here.
Thank you. And Commissioner Parker.
Present.
And Commissioner Chairperson Wenstrom is here. Public comment. I want to thank and congratulate the public. This is probably the first time we've had any policy debate for a year, and I thank you for your time to submit. We do have one comment regarding cattle grazing in the preserve, and we have 18 comments regarding e-bikes in the preserve. Those, because they are extensive, will be part of the minutes, but they will not be read for the obvious reason we would be here very, very late tonight.
And they are already posted on the city's webpage.
Perfect. So
Under the
they're
agenda.
already
So
under
it's
the
already
agenda.
Posted.
Super. Thank you, Croy. And we'll move on then to item number 4, which is approval of minutes. We've all had a chance to look at the marked agenda that we received. This is from the meeting of April 1st. Are there any changes or corrections? No changes or corrections? Then I will entertain a motion to accept as presented.
Commissioner Hackbarth makes motion to accept the minutes as provided.
Vice Chair LaPat Palasco seconds.
Thank you very much. And we will vote, starting with Vice Chair LaPat Palasco.
LaPat Palasco accepts. No.
Commissioner Coluccio,
Lucio is yes.
Commissioner Dodd,
Commissioner Dodd is yes.
Commissioner Hackbarth,
Commissioner Hackbarth is yes.
Commissioner Lips,
Commissioner Lips is yes.
Commissioner Parker,
Commissioner Parker, yes.
and Chair Wenstrom is yes. Thank you all very much. Policy update, we did change, we moved the policy update that will go to the May 6th agenda, and we will go to item number 5A, which is the existing ordinance prohibition of motorized vehicles. And this is basically a further discussion and opportunity for us to focus on this topic as a commission. And Croy, was there anything that you would like to add before we talk about the prohibition of motorized vehicles?
Thank you. I think the presentation, we're comfortable with what we presented back in March. We were not able to schedule the attorneys for this evening, so we can do that in a future meeting. So I would just encourage, if there are things that you would like us in, we talked about the existing ordinances and we're not looking to change those, but we were talking about the ADA accommodation and how we manage and do that. And that would be part of the goal in the future, is to come back with a proposal of how we could manage that. And so if there are questions, whether it be with regards to legal issues associated with that or with the management of that process, we're happy to take notes. If there's things that you would like us in particular to have researched or have answered, please make note of that, and Scott and I will take notes of that. And whether we're ready by the May 6th meeting or the May 20th will, I guess, depend a little bit about how many ideas and comments we have, but we can kind of talk about that at the conclusion of your discussion this evening.
Okay, wonderful. And commissioners, it is a situation where we have the opportunity to receive information, which, as Corey mentioned, we have already done. So we are open for discussion. We may choose to give staff direction, or we may choose to take a possible action. So we have one raised hand, Commissioner Lips.
Hi, this is Commissioner Lips. My question is that if we do some type of ADA type of token or badge or something that they put on their bike, if that is something, a direction that we go in, do we still need to change the preserve ordinance? Or does that just come under some kind of umbrella legally?
And again, this will depend upon the exact nature of a program that we would come up with, but our intent was not really to amend the ordinance for the purpose of ADA. The ADA is a federal law, and we need to comply with that. And what it does is establish methods for us to manage that. And so the concepts that we had talked previously, we did not believe there was a need for amending the ordinance. Now, there could be amendment to the ordinance if we want to be more clear about what the restriction of motorized vehicles means, and that for general use, that could be included if that were desired. So that's something that we can certainly come back. But the general allowance for ADA would not necessarily require an ordinance amendment, but that may again depend upon a little bit of the ideas and concepts that we research and come back to you with.
We've got raised hands.
Commissioner Hackbarth.
Commissioner Hackbarth?
Yes, thank you. This is Commissioner Hackbarth. Building on what Croy just said about the ADA, I would request that the lawyers come back to us and talk to us about how you define acceptable use and regular necessary use, I guess. I would point out that an e-bike typically has 2 wheels and is not used inside the building, which would be kind of contrary to what a handicapped wheelchair would be. So if it's not used inside of a building, how can that be something that would be a normal everyday use? It seems that the bike is not therefore covered under an ADA claim. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? There was a lot of discussion a month ago, so I really would like to hear your comments and thoughts. Considering that the ordinance does state there are no motorized vehicles in the preserve. And we have Commissioner Coluccio.
Thank you, Chairman Winstrom. So building on what Mark just said, one of the other individuals who sent remarks in prior to the meeting, I think basically indicated that there wasn't a need for any kind of ADA accommodation, that there was opportunities, elsewhere, and that we really didn't need to accommodate ADA individuals. So I think that that's probably the crux of the the entire conversation is, are we required to do something, or are we not required to do something to specifically accommodate ADA individuals? I think it's probably the legal or the lawyers who need to answer that. But have you gotten, Croy, any advanced opinions from them as to whether we do need to take action or we don't?
Thank you, Commissioner Coluccio. We'll certainly will have them address that more specifically. The general, and there's a lot of, the difficulty with this is there's a lot of layers to this. And so I want to be very clear that I'm not tonight trying to answer them all comprehensively. We will, the benefit of this discussion, we will take that and we will come back with something and have a presentation and look to address that. But to your question, and I guess to the issue of, well, we accommodate these uses elsewhere in the city. And that certainly is one aspect of accommodation, but within the preserve itself, where we allow a standard bicycle to occur, there is very likely then the interpretation that we would have to allow not any e-bike. And you've seen many things that really look like motorcycles or have huge speed, power, capabilities. Those are not what we were talking about. When we are talking an e-bike, what's commonly known as class 1 and maybe class 2 would be the arena that we think this would be aimed at, which are very similar to the existing bicycles that you would see being used in the preserve. And that's where the reasonable accommodation is likely required. And again, there are, and we'll be more thorough about this in a future meeting, but there are legitimate legal exposures that the city would risk if we were to not allow accommodation for those with disabilities. And so that's where we have to balance all these things of our laws and the laws over from the federal government and the risk management. All of those elements would come in. But at the same time, we very much believe we can be restrictive and define these elements so that the allowance of general usage is not in question, and the question of allowing more powerful things to occur in the preserve is also not in question. But we would be prepared to bring that back. Does that answer your question, Commissioner?
Yes, sir, and thank you very much.
And we have
Commissioner Hackbarth?
Thank you. This is Commissioner Hackbarth again. I would note that the city has agreed or is in the process of working on a smart city transportation plan, which, if I understand correctly, the crux is to try and keep pedestrians and other separate from other vehicles. And I would point out that in the case of the Loop 202, the pedestrian bicycle route there is kept separate. E-bikes are not allowed on that. And so I would ask that the city again consider if the smart city transportation plan would have any impact on how we allow or not allow e-bikes within the preserve. Thank you.
All right. So one of my questions as I was doing research as well, under Section 504 of the American with Disabilities Act, it states with regard to equal opportunity to participate in all programs, this applies as long as any modification necessary for participation by a person, easy for you to say, with a disability does not fundamentally alter the program or the services offered to all people. It goes on to say that the law does not require exceptional opportunity. And it seems to me, because we do not allow motorized vehicles in the preserve, that by offering e-bikes to ADA individuals, that is making an exception for a special group of people. And then I have to follow that up with the fact that the city of Scottsdale is very inclusive in providing ample sidewalks, parks, trails outside of the preserve that are open to e-bikes, and virtually everyone. There is some downtown area that does not allow e-bikes because it's too congested. And we sort of run into that same problem out on the trails, where the trails are single track. And we get into a lot of issues as far as the speed that the e-bikes can go. And I know that there were many comments about that today from the public, but those are all concerns that I think are important. And the fact that the city does in fact provide open arms for anyone with whatever that disability may be. But I would also say that the preserve does the same. We purposely built interpretive trails near the trailheads. We have purposely built short, small loops for people that want a small hike. That's their ability. And then we've made an effort to also do larger loops if one cares to go out further and deeper into the preserve. So it would seem to me, and I am going to go back to this piece here. It goes back to Scottsdale Ordinance 1762 that the city council has already had the opportunity to speak about this. And at that time, when they had the choice to put e-bikes in the preserve or not, the preserve, the city council chose not to allow them in the preserve, which aligns with the ordinance. So Mike, I'm gonna have a question for you, Troy, and that is, if we look at the city as a whole, we are allowing very reasonable, adequate, and probably more than ample access to all people, no matter your skill level, abilities, any disabilities that you may have. The preserve is a particular area that the citizens voted on to tax themselves to preserve the land, preserve the animals, the plants. Those are the primary pieces of having a preserve. Recreation is a small, almost a small number two. Our parks, they are built for recreation. Proud and loud, that's number one. So I don't see, I'm asking the question of why would we need to make an exception in the preserve when we have so many opportunities outside of the preserve? And we do offer the preserve opportunities as well. Like I said, small loop trails, interpretive trails. Those are all there for all abilities.
And again, and so we will have a probably more thorough answer to this, but I think it really comes down to, and what we're not proposing or what we're not anticipating here is introduction of anything that is some of the things that we're showing are like four-wheel quads that are comparable to off-road, and that's not at all what's being talked about.
Mm-hmm.
We're not even talking about them making changes to trails. We're saying that everything that's out there would remain as is, but it's really the comparison of a standard bike to an e-bike for the purpose of someone with a disability, so a legitimate disability. So the city ordinance spoke to allowing e-bikes throughout the city in certain areas for the general public, not limited to the ADA question. And so,
but for all the public.
For all the public. But you still have to, where you allow something, just as a regular bike, in the preserve, you have the comparison that someone with a disability has an equal right to access to that. And if an e-bike of similar impact as a standard bike does allow that, that's where the question of reasonable accommodation comes from, and our ability to manage that. So that not opening the ordinance to all general public users, but rather those with a defined disability by ADA. So that, and again, we'll come back and have a more thorough answer to that, but that's as simplistically as I can, that's trying to explain where that necessity comes from.
Right, but has that changed since the Scottsdale ordinance that the city council talked about in December 2018? Is there any change? No change.
I don't believe so.
Well, specifically with 1762, when the council approved that, it wasn't specifically related to the preserve. Really, it's just wherever we post a sign that says you can't have any of those types of devices, you're not allowed to have them. So us posting the signs in the preserve was based on the no motor vehicle clause that's in the preserve ordinance, and that we're interpreting that e-bikes they have motors, therefore they're not allowed. We posted the signs. So ordinance 1762 is just basically backing that up, that any place that we post, if we've got a super busy area out here outside the building, we don't want people riding e-bikes or motorized skateboard, you post it. That ordinance applies to any place that you post. So just to clarify, when the council approved that ordinance, they weren't specifically approving no e-bikes in the preserve. They were just approving any place that we post and sign. Therefore, you're not allowed to have those prohibited devices.
Okay, we'll get to our hand raise here. We had Steve Dodd first. Commissioner Dodd.
Yes. Obviously, between now and next meeting, Croy and our commission chair, Commissioner Winstrom, we'll be having some additional conversations with both attorneys and whoever else is appropriate. Would it be possible for the next meeting, since we're obviously going to have this discussion continuing, and there appears to be, based on the number of comments we've got, interest in this, could we at least ask our commission chair to prepare at least an outline of things that we should include in a recommendation to the council as to whether or not to change or not change the current rules? Not in great detail, but at least let's make sure we've got some document that shows us here are all the questions we need to get answered before we move something forward. Is that seem viable to others?
I would just say, I think that's consistent with how we had envisioned framing this out, that we would take your list of questions and ideas. As we previously noted, our sense had been there wouldn't be any changes to the ordinance. There would be potential, whether it's a pilot program or whatever that might be for the accommodation of ADA, that we would list that out and outline that and bring that back to you. And so absolutely whatever range, and there could be a wider array or a narrower array than what I just described. Those would be the things that we would look to bring back. And again, depending on whether we think we can be ready by the 6th or the 20th of May, let's say, we could also work to have that out ahead of time so that so that it's not being presented to you and you're seeing it for the first time the day of the meeting. We would absolutely want to make sure that we have all this, I would say, a week in advance, so you have the weekend before to study it and opportunity to see some of that information. So those would be the things that were in my thought process of what we would be looking to prepare for whenever we're ready, be that in 3 weeks or 5 weeks.
Okay. Steve, did that answer your question? I heard that you want the commission chair to write up our concerns to make a recommendation to the council. Is that what I heard?
Yes, yeah. We have some, let's put together some document that guides us in the questions we need to have answered so that we can develop a recommendation to the city council as to whether to continue the ordinance as is or to make allowances for e-bikes.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to see us, let's make sure we've got information in hand and at least a track that here's what we need to make sure we cover. I just think it would be helpful to have that in hand so we don't have to continually come back to answer questions we didn't think of.
Right. Good point. Thank you for that.
And at least we have an outline that certainly would be subject to change and revision as we get further into it. But let's at least have something that we make sure we get all the questions answered so we can move forward in a timely fashion.
All right, good. Thank you, Steve. Next hand is Commissioner Hackbarth, please.
Yes, thank you. This is Commissioner Hackbarth with 2 points requesting information building on what Chair Mr. Dodd mentioned. The question of similar impacts as electric bikes versus a standard mountain bike was brought up in a number of the public comments. One of the comments even brought forward some issues, how many pounds a bike would weigh and how many pounds a person, etc. Building on that, I would request that the city provide some information about previous research that has been done, how much damage is done by weight or by frequency of use, etc. Does it affect the ground, the compaction, the erosion, more people going off trails, potentially danger to wildlife, etc. Something along those lines. That would be my first point, further information. The second point for requesting information would be about the current trails that we do have. When they were designed or engineered, were they for a set speed? In other words, if we throw on an e-bike that might have twice the speed of a pedaled bicycle, are we then creating a hazard that the city would be liable for? Or are the trails designed currently to go as fast as anybody can? In particular, trails that have the black diamond, where it's already said, special care should be taken on these segments. Anyhow, something that the lawyer could suss out on that topic would be useful. Thank you.
And we have one more hand currently. What's Commissioner Coluccio?
Oh, thank you, Chairman Winstrom.
Did you
Looks
have,
like you're muted, Steve.
Sorry, what?
Steve, Steve
Steve
Coluccio, you're
Oh.
you're muted?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Usually I just hit the space bar and that unmutes me, but that didn't work that time. So what I was going to say, a couple things here. Number one, I would support Commissioner Hackbarth's request for additional, to see what research is out there with regard to, impact on the trails. I think that there's probably a fair amount of research that has already been done. I know that there's more research that is being done or is planned to be done. So, that would certainly be helpful information. The second thing, though, on his point number two, I think that there's a misunderstanding about, who's using e-bikes. And I guess I'm getting into more of a general comment. And I want to come back to the ADA thing as well. But, the individuals who are using e-bikes in general, and this is the majority, are generally older people who aren't really interested in going fast. Yes, an e-bike can go 20 miles an hour, with the pedal assist, but a regular bike can go that fast and often does, especially in the downhill. So there is, some concerns about additional speed from e-bikes, but it's not in magnitude of they go twice as fast. So every rider is going to be out there riding twice as fast. So I'm going to move on to my comment about the ADA. So with, we all know that ADA, or let me rephrase that, the disabilities, the people with disabilities, they come in different types of disabilities, as well as, different degrees of disability. And we really seem to be focusing on either, class 1 or class 2 e-bikes. But what we need to remember, is if we go on to design this program, that, there's going to be people who are disabled to the point where they can't even ride an e-bike. They're going to require some other kind of device. So, whatever we, decide, for example, I think a year or so ago, we had Ability 360 come to the Tom Stum area, and they were taking some people, I think it was either rappelling or rock climbing or something like that. And, they used vehicles that were really, truly vehicles, kind of almost like quads to get these individuals out to the spot where they went. So I think that we need to be careful about being too focused on, the ADA situation and thinking that, only e-bikes are going to be the resolution, because we could potentially get into trouble with other people who e-bikes aren't appropriate for.
Thank you, Commissioner Coluccio. All good points. And I think one of the concerns is that very thing. While we can talk about the fact that this is going to let class 1 e-bikes in for ADA people, if I read correctly, and I believe I did, the comments that came in today, the vast majority talked about not being ADA individuals. They're just people that want to ride an e-bike in the preserve. And they have talked about the preserve, not as a preserve, but as a park. And I keep going back to the ordinance, which says this is not a park. Our number one purpose for the preserve and what people voted for is to preserve the land, period. We're very fortunate to be able to ride a bicycle, mountain bike, to rock climb, to hike, to bring our horse in to this beautiful preserve. It is not a park. And yet, again, the vast majority of what I saw come in on comments were people who were not talking about ADA. They did talk about having some age-related issues. They talked about only being able to go so far, et cetera. Those things can all be done outside of the preserve. We have a lot of opportunities outside of the preserve. So I'm wondering, what are we opening ourselves up for by saying we're going to open this up to ADA only on a particular bicycle, and how, I don't see how that's managed. We're having a hard time. Stewards are concerned about the ability to even identify what an e-bike is. And one of the directions I had given to staff a few weeks ago was we have got to have a tool for the stewards to tell the difference between an e-bike and a regular bike, and then also give riders options of, here is where you can take your e-bike legally. So where might we be on something like that? Because that happens, that's critical for our stewards anyway.
And just clarifying, sorry, the specific just to the opportunity of other locations?
Other locations, right? E-bikes are not allowed in the preserve, but you can go here. We talked about that as a good
Right,
tool.
and that would absolutely be part of that overall program we were talking about. I mean, right
What kind
now,
of
we don't have stewards out.
Of course,
And so,
but we will.
we will get to that. And so the simple idea was very much that I think we noted that references to be it the Tonto National Forest or the County Regional Park or Phoenix or other locations would all be things that could be noted and have in a flyer that would be developed. Or however we develop the entire program, we can include that as part of that.
Right. I had a question for you as a follow-up too, and I'm sorry I lost that at the moment. But the program that you're talking about, what is it that you are referring to as far as a program?
Well, the thought would be that if we're, if we identify a registration process, if that's part of this, and there'd be an easy way of identifying people that if you have a disability, you need to come in and get a registration. If you're just a general citizen who does not have a disability, here would be your alternative locations that you could go to and ride your e-bike. It would be the, again, being very simplistic about that, but that would be the idea, that if we had clarity in the ADA accommodation, we'd have a description of that, and clarity for the general user looking somewhere to go somewhere, we'd have clarity in that as well.
And I'm not sure how that would work as far as being able to manage that. But we're not talking about the devil in the details right now. So
And there's examples out there, other agencies that have created programs like that we could certainly follow up with and see how their programs have been going, the way that they are registering. Boise's one example that we've looked at that does something very similar to that. That if you have a disability, you go to them, they give you acknowledgement. In that instance, they give you a sticker for your bike. They give you a map. Their trail system is quite varied. Some are on Boise land, some are on county land. They have a kind of a multi-jurisdictional system. So then Boise gives you a map of the trails they own and operate completely. Those are the ones that you're allowed to use. With a few exceptions, they did, again, in the spirit of being reasonably accommodating, there were several trails that were very heavily horse dominated in the usage. So they excluded those from the ADA e-bike exception. But then once that person has the sticker and the map, and they do, Boise does verify that through proof that it's either a class 1 or 2, they only allow those in that program. And then they allow the people to go out and use the e-bike.
Yeah.
And we'd also try and be proactive, utilizing be it our webpage or other opportunities of getting that information out ahead of time. And again, not wanting to go too far into the details, not knowing the direction we're heading, but the ability to get out and talk to or advise, be it guide groups, be it rental shops, be it bike shops, things of that nature are all much as we've done, be it with issues with dog safety, dog poop bags, all of those. I think it would follow a similar approach, is clarifying our rules and expectations and processes, and then making sure that we document that well, educate our team of staff and volunteers, and make sure that that's out. So that would be part of what would be developed, but it'd be a little premature to say exactly what that is, but along those lines.
Yeah. Of course, our dogs are allowed in the preserve.
Yes.
Motors still are not. So I'm going to go back to a couple of stories that have been shared with me, and that is back when the preserve was in its infancy and still being formulated. There was constant concern that you can't do this, you cannot have a preserve, people will bring up lawsuits, et cetera, et cetera. And I know that was a big fight, but they found that the attorneys told them that once you change the ordinance, now we can poke a lot of holes in the ordinance. So that's the concern of keeping the ordinance as it stays today. That's a big concern for people who voted to build the preserve and tax themselves to do that. It was to preserve the land. So I have to keep going back to that, and the fact that once we change the ordinance, what's next? And I'm playing devil's advocate here.
Right. And again, our proposal has been really not to amend that unless there was a desire to add more clarity. But and again, none of these are, we're not in a rush here. We're looking at doing this, having the opportunities. If we need to do this over several meetings in discussion, we're fine absolutely with that. And making sure that questions and considerations are all addressed as we go through that. So that would, but absolutely, those would all be things that we could walk through.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Coluccio, your hand is up.
Thank you, Chairman. So yeah, some of the, I guess the feedback that we've gotten is that, if we were to allow electric bikes into the preserve, there's a lot of groups out there, who do Jeep tours and have ATVs and yada, yada, yada. The question becomes, will they put pressure on the city, we want, our special interest group to have access to the preserve as well. So, that's definitely one of the concerns that I see, on the, the public information that's coming in. But, we've talked a couple times, I'm going to switch gears here. We've talked a couple times, about, well, there's plenty of other places for these people to go. And I'm talking now specifically about ADA individuals, okay? This is the preserve. This is the crown jewel of the city of Scottsdale. It's world known. This is where people want to be. I'm not sure that it makes sense, or I think that it's problematic is a better way to say that. It's problematic if we say, yeah, you can't come in here. We're not going to allow you to come in here because, you have a vehicle that, we don't approve of. I think that we're setting ourselves up, for problems, if we take the position that you can go on the green belt or you can go somewhere else. I think we have to be careful with this point, and that's my comment.
Thank you, Commissioner Coluccio. And Commissioner Dodd, your hand is up.
Yes, I just wanted to reiterate what Commissioner Winstrom said earlier. As we talk to other people and see what other places are doing, let's make sure we're looking at that through through eyeglasses that say we're a preserve, we're not a park. And let's not look at what parks are doing necessarily, because we're not a park. So let's make sure we're focused on what the purpose of the preserve is again, preserving this land. Let's make sure that our charge is to protect that. Let's make sure we're doing that. And if we have to do that at the expense of some recreation areas, not ADA related or anything like that, let's make sure we're protecting the land for the future, because that's what we're supposed to be doing. So, but let's be careful where we get advice from.
Thank you, Commissioner Dodd. And Commissioner Lips, you have your hand up, please.
Well, this is Commissioner Lips, and my feeling has always been that this is a Pandora's box for a lot of reasons. That once you open the door to it, we have no idea what other future mechanical type of devices or whatever are going to be right on, following right behind those e-bikes. And, so I really, really, really agree with the fact that this is the preserve. And it's really about preserving the preserve. It's not about the recreational attributes of the preserve. And, and that's got to be something that we're more focused on, is protecting the preserve first and foremost, and, not caving into the desires of, people who have fancier bicycles with, that are mechanized. And I just think that once we open this door, there's no turning back, because there's always going to be something coming right after it. We're lucky that this has lasted, for the last 25 years, that we've been able to, control the recreation as much as we have. And I just really fear that if we open this up and allow this to be commonplace, to have e-bikes in the preserve, that what's the next thing that comes down the pike? And what's that going to do to the preserve and the animals that live there and the plants that live there and things like that? So that's really where I'm coming from, but just my comments.
Thank you, Marcia. Appreciate it. I believe Commissioner Hackbarth was next.
Thank you. This is Commissioner Hackbarth again. I have one observation. So far, we've been talking about, here's what the public opinions have been. I would like to ask the staff to look into how we could adequately sample public opinion and not just rely on individuals that were aware of the meeting, etc. In other words, do we have a sign-in sheet at every trailhead that says, check here if you want to allow e-bikes, check here if you don't? Do you go out to the voter polls and rolls and say, send us your comments? What are the options, in other words, for getting a wider public input? Thank you.
Croy, to you, is that something that can be done? Because quite frankly, at the end of the day, thank you, Commissioner Hackbarth. It's really, anytime someone is against something, they're probably going to be more vocal, which is what we saw today. We had many more comments from the user group. Bicycles, but not necessarily ADA people, which is what you're talking about. So what is the mechanism to poll the public?
We can bring back some of those options. I would certainly, this was, there was not a lot of advance notice on this. And so there could be a much broader reaction with a longer lead period. And so we can absolutely look at it. We have many different ways of accommodating public input. Generally, in the public meeting process, you're gonna involve those who have the most interest or vested
Of course.
interest. So
Of
that's
course.
always going to come with that. There's other ways of doing opinion polls that are more scientific and sampling, but that may or may not hit all the target audience. So we'd have to
Right.
do a little more research into that. But there are those opportunities for exploring that.
All right. And Commissioner Dodd?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay, never mind.
I neglected to pull my hand down.
Okay, that's all right. No, we're all working virtual here. Good job. All right, so other comments, commissioners? Anything else you'd like to share? Commissioner Lips?
I was fascinated by the cattle. If you want to talk about comment cards that we got.
That is not an agendized item.
Right.
Oh,
And
okay,
so,
I'm sorry. Then
we-
erase me.
In the future, we'll be bringing back wildland fire protections, and we could include it under that for an
Okay.
opportunity to have a discussion.
Thank you, Commissioner Lips. And Commissioner Plasko?
Thanks. Yeah, hi. I'm really going to be interested to hear what our legal department has to say, because I think we have to be really cognizant that we always want to be a city that's open, but what are our legal options? So if they can really dive into that and kind of give all the, the major pros and cons of how we proceed with that, I think that'll be helpful for our understanding. So my guess is that's what they're going to do.
Thank you, Commissioner Plasko. To that question, Croy, did you need to respond to that? No.
Not specifically.
Yeah.
Certainly, as I mentioned before, we will be
Yeah,
having our city attorney's office involved.
right. And are you aware of issues at all that have come up before?
Well, specific to the preserve, I may have mentioned, I think the previous meeting, that the issue of step gates, when we first put those in.
The equestrian step gates?
Well, they're step gates into the
It's a
preserve.
step gate,
And so they were meant to really prevent motorcycles from easily coming in, or quads or things of that nature. And they do allow anyone to step over, and equestrian to step over.
Mhm.
And we have those in many locations. And we did have to respond to the Department of Justice. And we did make some physical accommodations by putting in what are called swing gates in several locations. And all of our trailheads allow full access for those with disabilities.
Right.
But again, without stealing all the thunder of the attorneys, I think we're going to hear that, and nothing that staff has presented would suggest that we are looking to amend the ordinance or looking to allow e-bikes in general.
Mhm.
And so what I want to be very clear about is that we are talking about those that have a true ADA defined disability with the ability of managing or accommodating that, and that a limited array of e-bikes might qualify for that. And again, all that we can work through and talk about. And that those are the issues that if we don't do that, I think there are very strong legal risks and liabilities to the city
Mhm.
that are there. Again, I'm not the
Right.
the final legal aspect. I'm not trying
Of
to
course.
dissuade any of the comments or feedback. That's not my intent.
Right.
I just want to be very realistic about that these are things that, had we not shown accommodation to the Department of Justice, and this happens in other settings, and I
Mhm.
don't want to get into comparisons, but there are lawsuits that occur and they have substantial penalties or liabilities that come with them if we don't show accommodation.
Sure.
And again, now I'm not talking about accommodation throughout the city, but within the preserve, if we allow a similar or equivalent type of use, i.e. a regular bike, and for those that have a disability, not allow them to have access with an e-bike, which didn't really exist 25 years ago, and have really only become much more popular, I would say, in the last 3 to 5 years because of the advancement of batteries and the ability to really do that. I'm not saying there weren't some odd one-off opportunities before that, but it's really been this and the advancement of COVID and the interest of that. And we've seen it in Europe. They were ahead of us. And so my point being that there are those types of things that from the broad city standpoint have to be acknowledged but again, accommodating or addressing all the concerns and considerations of protecting the preserve, assuring that this is still passive, that we're not opening the door to motorcycles or things of that nature. We believe all of those are achievable, that we can avoid that. I understand the concern with setting precedent and letting I think camel's nose under the tent has been raised. I understand that, and we believe there are ways to manage that, but we understand we need to talk that through.
Right.
And I'm not asking you to believe that just because we say it, but those would be the things that we would bring back and continue that discussion.
Okay, so I have to ask a quick question.
That's fine.
Indulge me in the
Yes.
DOJ and the step gate. When did that happen? Because I don't remember that coming before the commission.
I know we did a presentation on it because we actually, I think, did a site tour. The exact date, I'll have to go back and look. It goes back a few years back. I want to say at least 4 to 5. It was well before we started the full-on planning for Granite and Frisfield, which I think is about 4 years ago now.
Yeah.
Time flies. But it was before that because part of the concern came at those two trailheads where we had just a step gate in there. And so unlike our other trailheads where you pull in and park and have ADA stalls and there are ADA paved ramps up to the trailhead and then on to where interpretive trails or other things were available, we had that accommodation. But in those two, when we built them temporary, we did not provide a way through for someone that was in a wheelchair. And so that's where we went with what I could describe as the swing gate. So I'm pretty sure we did a PowerPoint presentation and we had designs and photographs of all these.
And two of the locations, we modified 3 locations, Fracefield, Granite, and then we did Redbird and 128th Street in the Gooseneck area. 2 of them have become moot because Fracefield and Granite are now full on.
So they're not even there anymore?
Correct.
Okay.
The swing gate, or sometimes it's called a kissing gate. It's got kind of a little corral feature to it. The gate swings back and forth so you can move into it with your wheelchair, swing the gate behind you and then move through it.
Almost like a man trap or a vehicle trap.
Yeah. Sort of, yeah. Yep. So there was nothing you had to step over to get into the preserve. So 2 of those have been removed because they're just not needed anymore because now there's complete access at Fracefield and Granite Mountain trailheads. But the one at Redbird and 128th Street is still
there
in place.
Okay. Well, that was a long time ago. That was early in my commission days. So
yeah, it might have even been before. I'd have to check at the exact date. So I apologize for my failing
no
memory on
worries.
that date.
Thanks for the background, though. I appreciate that. And Commissioner Coluccio, your hand is up. I'm sorry for the length of time to wait there.
No problem. Thank you, Chairman. My question is, and I probably should have asked this at the very beginning, with regard to the ADA accommodation, has there been some kind of incident or specific reason why we're trying to deal with this issue now?
I think
Go ahead.
Well, I think that the short answer is that previously the amount of use in years past, although happening, was at a lower level. I think observations were being made this past fall that there was some increase. And again, I think that goes back to a number of things, the advancement of battery technology, advancement of e-bikes themselves, and then the impact of COVID and more people looking for alternatives. We've seen a 30 to 40% increase in general. Others have seen up to 100% increase in usage in certain outdoor spaces. And part of it is we, although not having stewards out in pathfinding roles at this time, but usually when we have them there and we don't have clarity as to how we're managing a situation, we have difficulty. And it is hard on stewards and staff if we're not clear as to what our rules are. And the posting of signs that we did right after the first of the year, when I sent out that notice, was the first thing that we did to advance the signs at the entry of the gate, at the entry of the trailheads, not once you were already in. We certainly drew some level of reaction from that. I don't think it was overwhelming, but I think it's just this is the evolution as use increased and the technology changes is really what brought that about, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Good question. Thank you very much. All right. What else? Is there anything else that we need to talk about this, or does everybody feel like they've gotten their comments out there? Good to go. All right. So again, I'm going to go back to the majority of the comments that I saw today were not from ADA accessible people, and yet these people will be expected to also come into the preserve. They'll be expected.
Well,
to.
they may
They call, from their perspective, they have the right to bring an e-bike into the preserve.
not if they're not an ADA. That would be.
But I am talking about the people that sent us all of our comments.
And it probably, I did not do I looked at them all.
Yeah.
Some of them clearly show an indication of ADA. Some of them, I think, were just advocating for e-bikes in general.
Correct.
And so that would be part of the but that exists today, that distinguishment. And so, but we will bring that back. I understand the point, and we will certainly have that as part of what we look at there.
Okay. So I'm going to go back to Steve has asked, let me see if I can find Steve's comment. He just is asking that you and I, Croy, are going to work together to come up with questions for the attorneys so that we can have these answered. And that is going to come up on the agenda. Actually, that'll come up. We'll talk about that on item number 7. But I want to make sure that that is done so that all the questions are answered. There were some good questions. Thank you all for bringing those up. At this time, if there's nothing else regarding e-bikes, again, staff direction is to create that card or that pamphlet and get the background for our stewards and general people. It doesn't just have to be for stewards. Anybody should be able to pick up that card.
And again, my goal would be not to create that before the next meeting.
Oh, correct. I just
Right.
want to make
That
sure that
would-
it's on an action.
I'm
item.
generally thinking this might be the fall, the next season that we're ready with that. If we're ready sooner, that's fine. But it's going to depend
Yeah.
upon the direction
Right.
and resolving this so that we're all clear, so that whatever we put out there is what everyone expects. So
And let me ask I know this is a crazy question, but I will put it out there anyway. If the attorneys are coming to the next meeting, or when the attorneys are coming, that's going to be a big draw for this meeting. That's going to be very important, I think, for the commission and for the public. What are the opportunities of having an in-person meeting as other commissions do in the Kiva? Of course, strategically placing people, but having the opportunity for people to speak and ask questions in person, even if it means changing the date.
yeah, it may involve that.
That's fine.
And we'll do some further exploration. The likelihood of full-on public meetings is probably still a ways off,
Mhm.
just based on that. And I don't even want to speculate
Right,
right
of
now
course.
as to when.
No, not asking.
But the issue of use of the Kiva then comes down to availability and staffing, because it
Mhm.
does take not just the staff that we have helping us with the technology here, but there's the video aspect that's
Right.
associated with that.
Of
And so
course.
there's a number of things that are beyond our normal scope that we would just need to coordinate and accommodate. So
Okay.
that would be it may take a little bit to
Right.
get an answer on that.
Along with that, I would ask, what are the opportunities for the public to call in, since they can't meet with us in person and et cetera? Because we've never been able to do that. And I don't see that that's accommodated on our website. That this is how you can call into a meeting if you wish.
So there are ways to do that. It's another hybrid approach,
Okay.
and we can evaluate that
Okay,
if the keep is not available or
Okay.
not. But certainly understanding that.
okay,
and,
perfect, because I think that's a
um,
big concern as well. And if you can come back to us on the May 6th meeting with what the options are for that, so we know how best to handle that, because I think it's important to have public comment.
Right.
The ability to call in. All right. We will move on from 5A. Thank you all for your comments, and we'll go to staff reports, item number 6.
Thank you, Chair Wenstrom, Commissioners. I have a couple quick items that we'll go through on the staff report. For one, as you've been driving around town for the last week, maybe 10 days, you may have noticed some of these new fire danger signs that have been placed. This one happens to be on Rio Verde, out there near the Fracefield trailhead. We've had signs like this around town before in very small numbers. The fire department, in coordination with Preserve and Transportation and other departments, recently added 20 new fire danger signs like this one you see here. Here's one that I happened to pass just this morning over near the 104th Street and Bell trailhead. So they will run from fire danger low to moderate to extreme. And as you can see, we are in extreme right now. So really the goal of this is just to put the community on notice as they're out about town that there is fire danger. And then jumping over to 136th Street, this is up near Dove Valley. We started earlier this week on Monday morning with one of our contractors clearing vegetation and fine fuels along the roadway. Very similar to what we've talked about in the past on Pima Road that the Department of Forestry and Fire Management was doing. This work is being completed by contractors that are working on behalf of the city of Scottsdale, and they're being paid. These contracts are being paid through a grant from Maricopa County Emergency Management Department. And then here's just a couple, here's a before photo and the after photo. So you can see a lot of that heavy overgrowth was removed. Interesting to see in this photograph too, the clear dirt that you see in the foreground, that's the result of work we have been doing for the last several years, weed whacking that edge of the road, applying pre-emergent to it to keep the grass from growing. So that's actually a big improvement. What this used to look like was fine fuel, essentially red brome grass growing right up to that edge of the asphalt. Obviously the concern with that is any spark, a tire blowout, dragging trailer chain, a cigarette butt, anything like that could have started that grass on fire really easily. So you can see some of the work that's been done in the past, and then now we've kind of taken it a little further out. We're going out to about 50 feet from the edge of the asphalt, bringing up those trees, thinning out the shrubbery, weed whacking the fine fuels just to give ourselves a fighting chance. And it kind of goes two ways here. If a fire started in the preserve, maybe a lightning caused fire, if it was burning towards 136th Street and the neighborhood on the other side, this would be a really good way to slow that fire down and stop the forward progress, or vice versa, coming out of the neighborhood or off the road, going west into the preserve. Here's just another before photo. You can see a lot of heavy dead vegetation. There is still, this is that little bit higher elevation of the preserve. There's still quite a bit of snow damage from 2019 from our Snowmageddon event. So there's a lot of down and dead trees. So we're removing all the dead branches, limbing up the lower branches, and then also any tree that has mistletoe infestation over 50%, that tree is getting removed completely because they likely will not survive that level of infestation. So this work will be ongoing for the next several weeks. Real quick mention, many of you know Tiffany. That's Tiffany and her tortoise, which I can't remember the name of, but there was a training class last week with the steward group that is involved with the tortoise telemetry project. And we understood prior to the meeting that Commissioner Coluccio was out with them today on their first venture into the field to find tortoises and to apply the telemetry trackers to them. So that's very exciting. And then just a couple quick shots of the Pima Dynamite Trailhead. If you've been past on the Pima Road entrance lately, this is the new entry wall where the driveway will come in. This wall will, the entry gate will hide behind it when it's in the open position. It'll also get the Pima Dynamite Trailhead steel sign on it. This is the equestrian staging area. You can see the ramada, that board form on kind of on the right-hand side of the photo. That's the water trough. Several locations on the site. We're using gabion baskets to retain slopes, so that's underway. This is the main building. This is the office side of the building. They're putting the plywood up. Sheetrock will be coming soon and insulation, so things are moving along pretty good. This is the other side of the breezeway, which is mainly the restroom building. So it's coming together. We're still on track for midsummer for completion and a soft opening. And starting to think maybe, just maybe, we could have a community gathering and celebration sometime this fall, potentially in October, McDowell Sonoran month, to celebrate the new facility. Sorry, this isn't the best photo, but did want to share this with you. When we've been out to visit Area K, Doug has been working very hard getting some of the wire fences, and this is a woven wire cable barrier that's at that high spot on the rock that we walked up to. So just wanted to share with you a shot of the progress that's out there. We should be wrapping up here potentially as early as tomorrow, be completed with all the fencing work and all the trail work is done in this area. And from there, we'll be moving on to our signage planning and signage installation and updating the map. And we're trying to time that with the completion of the Pima Dynamite Trailhead. That was all I had. I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
I see no questions.
All right,
All
thank you.
right. Thank you. Very good, Scott. We will move on to number 7, upcoming meeting dates. Corey, do you want to talk to that?
Yeah, real briefly. Obviously, we've got the 6th, and I think it's the 20th. I may have had a typo in there, not the 21st. As far as the May upcoming dates. We'll look at that. We'll visit with the attorneys and coordinate with the chair here on exactly what goes when. For the 6th, we'll definitely have some updates on the public policy process that were scheduled for tonight. We'll have some of those, so we'll definitely have some of that. And then whether we're ready for a follow-up on the ADA accommodation or not, we'll coordinate with the chair and update everybody as our timing on that. And then I just updated that somewhere likely in June, we will do our tour of the Pima Dynamite Trailhead prior to its opening. As we get a little further down the road, when maybe some of the stuff is a little further along than the photos Scott had today, where we can tour the building and stuff like that. But they may still be doing painting or things like that, is what we'll probably try and target. So I don't, June is, I think, the likely date. Might be a little later in the month, but we'll keep you updated on that and figure that one out. So that's all I had right now.
Let's go back to the May 6th. Oh, a hand. Go, Commissioner Coluccio.
Yes, I had the May, the 2nd May meeting down as the 20th.
It
Yes.
is. It was a typo. It is the 20th.
Thank you.
Thank you for catching. Go back to the 6th just for a second, Croy. Let's make sure that if we're going to take the motorized vehicle prohibition off of the 6th, that's done. But if it stays on, that we want to make sure that that is with possible actions for the commission to take action if they need to.
And that it'll also address the notes you asked about as far as the meeting type and
Yes,
location.
all
So
those
that may
things.
so
All those things.
based on that, there might be a proposal to go, and we would do our polling approach with you all as far as availability if we need a different date
Absolutely.
in order to achieve that. So
Yeah.
just be prepared that It may take a little bit of time. I think the 6th would be aggressive to accommodate that, those alternate meeting types. But I don't want to
Right,
preclude it. I'm just going to be cautious about whether that one can actually happen at that point. And again, I don't think any of these are a rush. So whether
Right.
it's later in May or even in early June, that still gives us plenty of time to talk through and have, but we'll work our way through that and get
Okay.
back with you.
let me just ask the commissioners, do you have any questions regarding if we do a different date, and we don't know what the date would be, but would you be amenable to a different date that would allow us a little bit more personal interaction, if you will? And
Yes,
yes, I hear from Commissioner Coluccio. Okay,
Yes, except Wednesday nights.
okay, except Wednesday nights. Thank you, Commissioner Palasco. All right, we're to go with the fact that it will be a yes, if need be,
And again,
if need be. Right,
we'll have to find out what's available and what dates are, and then we'll do a polling. And obviously, we'd want to have, if not complete, high level of participation. We understand that. So
Absolutely.
we wouldn't be
right.
looking to create something that the majority or a significant
No.
significant number couldn't attend. So
Correct. We want our
we'll work our way
commissioners there.
through that.
All right, thank you very much. Any commissioner, Croy, were you done?
Yes,
Okay, sorry,
thank you.
didn't mean to step on your toes. Commissioner comments, anything else that you would like to comment on? Yes, Commissioner Hackbarth.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment that, I don't know if this is the appropriate time. The individual's public comment from earlier
Yes,
using animals is very similar to what was being advocated in the 1990s as holistic resource management. So perhaps the city staff could come back with a review of how that has fared in the past 2-3 decades of people saying, does it work or does it not work? Thank you.
thank you, Commissioner Hackbarth, referring to the first comment that we got. Okay, super. Anybody else, commissioner comments? Okay, I hear none. Again, thank you for everybody's participation, and we will move on. I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Commissioner Coluccio makes a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Commissioner Coluccio, and a second, please. And yes, Commissioner Lips.
Commissioner Lips gives a second to adjourn.
Okay, thank you very much. And a vote. We'll start with Vice Chair Pat Palasco.
Vice Chair Pat Plasko votes yes.
Okay, Commissioner Coluccio,
Coluccio votes yes.
Commissioner Dodd,
Mr. Dodd votes yes.
Commissioner Hackbarth,
Commissioner Hackbarth votes yes.
Commissioner Lips,
Commissioner Lips votes yes.
Commissioner Parker,
Commissioner Parker votes yes.
and Chairperson Wenstrom votes yes. Thank you all very much. We are adjourning at 6:13.